Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 best designed Ark Tames, so let's get into it. In at number 10 is the Baryonyx, and this creature is obviously very widely renowned and recognised for its insane caving abilities, but also its character is an extremely iconic one too, with its elongated tail and very sharp teeth, and also its tendency to just eat fish meat. This is a carnivore pretty much like no other, especially considering the time frame where this thing came out, and that was far before creatures like the Shadowmane were introduced, so it really was the first creature there in terms of great caving tames, and it really was a big influence back in the day, and it still is my favourite caving creature to this day, and it really has to be talked about in terms of well-designed tames, especially in terms of its body and movement as well. It's got a really slim figure, it moves really fast, and its model is heavily detailed as well, and obviously, like I said, a very iconic one. It is also packed with a wealth of special abilities, namely obviously its spin attack in the water. When you press right click, it will stun creatures up to the size of a megalodon. And on top of all of that, it does great damage too, and that is something you always want on any carnivore. In at number 9 is the Carno, and again, this is another one of those old influential Ark Tames, and it really is one of design. And if you've never seen one up close before, they will definitely make you laugh when you actually look up to it. Its arms are so comedically tiny, you cannot help but laugh at it. But it is also, on top of its comedic value, a very great creature with great mobility and great damage, and since the TLC, it has a bleed ability attack as well, which is something you always want on any kind of carnivore, and you do really need it at some point on any kind of carnivore to make it that best carnivore of which you can think of. And yes, the Aloe may be a bit of an upgrade, having a better weight stat and dealing more damage and just being a bigger and more powerful creature, but I always have love for the Carno, and especially considering how early on you can unlock its saddle and how ridiculously easy this thing is to tame, although on ASA that really doesn't matter anymore, as the baby creatures just make taming carnivores like this extremely easy anyway. But still, in ASE, the Carno is significantly easier to tame than the Aloe, and in my opinion, it is just my preferred creature due to its smaller size. It is just a more efficiently designed creature in my opinion, and I really like it for that, and I really like it for its character, its model design, and just its general charm on top of that as well. I really can't see myself in Ark without one of these things, and as always, call your Carnos Carny Dave. Next up, we have the Basilo, and this really is the epitome of underwater creature ocean design. This is pretty much the best ocean creature which you can find, especially for doing caves on the island, which is obviously very relevant at the moment, as the island is the only real non-janky map which you can get on ASA. Obviously, Svartalfheim is available as well, but I'm pretty sure that solution is a little bit more janky, and some stuff has to be done. It doesn't just come when you obviously install it, and you can't just install it like you would install a DLC Ark map on ASE. It's on a different modding platform. It's on something different. You can probably look up how to do it, but to this day I'm still not really sure. The only real downside with the Basilo is the fact that it has a depth limit, but the fact that it can withstand electric eels and jellyfish and those kind of creatures, this really is a creature which you should tame at some point, albeit its passive tame can be a little bit of an annoying one, but it is definitely one worth taming, as it is a really cool tame. In at number 7 is the Reaper, and the Reaper really can't be forgotten about in terms of great creature design. Obviously, it isn't the most inventive thing out there, pretty much just being an exact copy from the film Alien, but it still does have a slightly different twist on the xenomorph character that we all know and love. And it definitely doesn't mean it is a bad creature at all, and it is an extremely powerful one, just like you'd expect if you've watched Alien or Aliens. For that matter, they're the only real ones worth watching. Don't watch any more than that. Alien and Aliens is all you need in terms of xenomorph films. but obviously the Reaper has immense power. And also, alien style, these things will burst out of your stomach, but they won't kill you, but the baby may actually kill you after it if you don't have the adequate amount of Reaper pheromones to essentially act yourself as being the mother of that child. But it will burst out of you Xenomorph style, like it does in the film Alien. And on top of that as well, while it is still inside of you, getting loads of XP will warrant an 100% effectiveness, which is a really cool thing, which yes, the Rhinogonatha has a similar taming method for. The Reaper method is still a lot cooler to me. Now, we obviously can't discount the Argy for its design as well. This is probably one of the most well-rounded Ark creatures out there for so many things, and it is the epitome of metal farming on Ark. No creature can compete with the level of which you unlock this, and also the amount of skill and abilities and mobility this creature has. Albeit it isn't the fastest flyer, it will still pack a punch in terms of damage, and it has stamina to fly over the long run, and it also has weight to carry any resource of which you wish, especially things like metal, crystal, and obsidian, which have insane weight reduction. And it can also pick up a wealth of creatures as well, which is just something which I really like to see, and it is great to see how many creatures this thing can pick up, especially considering its size. And obviously when paired with the Anki, you have yourself an ultimate pairing of flyer to land creature, as the Anki can gather tons and tons of metal for you, and then you can simply carry that back on the Argy back to your base, and you'll have yourself an absolute metal load. And also on top of that, it does have a portable smithy as a saddle, so if any of your metal weapons break, always make sure to have a couple of spare metal ingots in the Argy saddle, and you can simply fix up a pick or a hatchet or a piece of flak armor if you've just done a cave run. And if you eat a dead corpse, if you're low on health, they have really great regen. Definitely something to try out. In at number 5 is the Maewing, and this creature is obviously one which is highly respected and is a very new creature, full of a wealth of abilities. And in terms of its design, it is pretty much the best travel mount which you can find out there. Obviously it doesn't compare to the Argy in terms of utility, but in terms of speed and getting around the place, the Maewing will do significantly better. But this thing obviously isn't meant to carry around metal. It is meant to carry around babies, as its saddle has 4 points where you can hold any baby creature. Doesn't matter what they are, we don't need to care about size or scale, they'll simply scale down into the saddle. Not really sure how that works, but you know, it is Ark, I guess, and we'll just go along with it. And obviously the Maewing also acts as a portable feeding trough as well, which obviously does help baby growth too. And yes, a feeding trough isn't the most expensive thing. It is so much more convenient to have this thing out, as you don't have to use up loads and loads of meat, and you can easily move that feeding trough around if you have multiple bases. Not to mention that if you belly flop on bushes as well, you can gather berries with it too. Now, the Deinonychus really can't be forgotten. This creature is one of immense skill and immense power, and is probably the best boss creature to date. And in terms of its model design, it is definitely one of intricacy and great detail. This thing has an insane amount of model detail, and with all of its feathers, it really is a nice model. And on top of that, it can grapple onto large creatures and literally just suck the blood, or tear the blood, you should say, right out of them. And this works on bosses as well, which no other Ark creature, to my knowledge, can do. Obviously making this pretty much the best boss creature, as the bleed ability is absolutely OP. And also on top of that, they have great mobility too, and their transport is definitely one of the highest out of any of the carnivores in Ark. Not to mention that they don't even take full damage as well, which albeit isn't a big issue, as you can always just dismount just before you hit the ground to negate all full damage, but it is still really nice, as you can be much more fluid in your motions, and it is so much more satisfying to use this thing. Not to also mention that it does have the pack buff too, making this even better for bosses, as obviously you're not just going to be bringing one. And although not the most elegantly, it can also grapple over many walls and vertical surfaces, which is an extremely useful ability for any Ark creature to have. In at number 3 is the Shadowmane, and this creature is again one of the newer ones, but it really has to be mentioned really high on the list for its design. The Shadowmane is just there every time when it turns to good design in terms of Ark, and this really was a great decision from Wildcard to include this thing in the game, as it is now one of the most popular Ark Tames out there by far, and at the moment the Shadowmane is being widely used by everyone. But mainly people are just going to tame the highest level male and highest level female and then just breed them, as their taming method is an absolute pain, and I have done it a couple of times and I really don't want to do it again, but I will obviously at some point when I play through Gen 2 on ASA, whenever that is. I know the release dates have kind of been announced, but it may be a bit rushed or it will be delayed. Who knows at this point with Wildcard. But also, some people don't know about this, the Shadowmane is a great swimmer too, but it kind of makes sense considering its codename is literally Lionfish Lion. In at number 2 is the Desmodus Draculae, and this thing is obviously again one of the newer Ark Tames, but it is just one of such great design that it seriously can't be discounted on this list, especially considering its insane design and also its insane ergonomics. This thing is one of the best controlling flyers out there, obviously having the glide ability shared with creatures like the Snow Owl and the Griffin, but yet somehow seems to be even smoother than the two of them, while dealing insane amounts of damage as well, being great for farming blood bags, which no other Ark creature can do, being able to grapple onto walls and vertical surfaces, even ceilings like a Tapijara, and also making Sanguine Elixir, which is an absolute cheat for tames. Not to also mention it can go invisible too, although only at night time, and that won't work on Extinction, or at least I didn't manage to get that to work, so maybe don't use these things on Extinction. And finally, in at number 1 is the Velonasaur, and this may be a bit controversial for many of you, but I really am fond of this creature's design, and in terms of creature design, model design and abilities, I think this is the coolest out there. Obviously literally being a living, moving turret, which no other Ark creature still to this day has done. And obviously Extinction came out like 2018, 2019, not quite sure when it was, but it has either way been a long while, and I'm actually seriously questioning why Wildcard hasn't actually revisited this thing, as it is literally my favourite tame to use at the moment, especially considering I am replaying through Extinction. It is just so fast, easy to control, and it deals immense amounts of damage with its turret ability. Albeit you wouldn't use it this close to a creature, you would just use its general hack and slash ability, but just for demonstration I was just showing it to you there. And also its animation kind of does look really creepy as well. But in terms of the way that this thing attacks, no other Ark creature can compare to this thing in terms of design, and also just in general how creative this creature is, which is why I put it in at number 1. So shout out to this month's patrons: Karina Thorne, Dominic, Macy, Drewski, sorry about the pronunciation there, Louis, Oren, Levi, McDaniel, Ellen, Martinson, and Jim Fowley. I appreciate all of your support, and if you're not a Patreon, then go join now.